Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining me for another episode of The Goldie Show. Very original name, I know, but there you go. So, today we're going to go back to a topic that I was speaking about last week, politicians who are starting to fight back against radical Islam. Before I begin, just wanted to say hello to everyone, and of course, hi to everyone watching me on YouTube. And if you don't mind, like and subscribe to the channel to help me raise awareness about what's going on. And you know what's actually really interesting? I'm really grateful for all of your support because in the last 2 weeks, on YouTube, I've gone from under 2,000 subscribers before I began, and now I have over 11,000 subscribers. And that's just in the last 2 weeks. So there you go. I guess my message is resonating, and I really do appreciate all the support I'm getting. So last week I spoke about politicians fighting back against radical Islam, and I focused quite heavily on Japan and a little bit on Portugal as well with the burqa ban. Today, I'm going to be focusing specifically on the United States. Um, and the reason that I'm going to be focusing on the United States is because of the upcoming mayoral race. Well, there's a few things there. So the first one is the upcoming election in New York City. There's a lot of conversations and back and forth there. The other reason I want to talk about the United States is because of what's happening in Dearborn, Michigan. With the Muslim mayor telling the white Christian American to leave and get out of his city. And the third reason is because there is an act in the United States now that was introduced by Congressman Randy Fine to ban Sharia law. And I was looking at Congressman Fine's tweets, and he has been, in the last few weeks or so, he has been incredibly outspoken. And I'm glad. I'm glad because it seems like Americans are finally waking up to the threat of radical Islam and fighting back. And that needs to happen. And what's really interesting is that the things that Randy Fine is saying, if he was a politician in Canada, he would be accused by the powerful Muslim lobby groups of Islamophobia, and then he would be kicked out of caucus, which is exactly what happened to me. And I wasn't even as explicit as what Randy is saying. So I'm going to go through his tweets because Randy talks about a lot of things, and you can see why he is concerned, right? I mean, let's watch this video. I played this video a few weeks ago, but I want to play it again because this is a clip. This is a guy, okay? His name is Abdullah. He is a Harvard graduate student. And yet on October 7th, so at the 2-year anniversary of October 7, where Hamas terrorists broke into Israel and genocided over 1,200 innocent people, this guy's celebrating it. Not only is he celebrating the October 7 genocidal massacre, he also says that he wants it to happen over and over and over again. And he says that he wants to repeat October 7 in the United States. And this is going on while President Trump is working on that Middle East peace treaty, right? Peace in the Middle East. So at this point, at this point, there was already sort of a working ceasefire in place. And yet, instead of celebrating the ceasefire, instead of focusing on peace and moving forward, this guy is saying he wants to repeat October 7 over and over again. And, I've been saying for a long time that these, pro-Hamas, pro-Palestine demonstrations that are happening in Western countries are not about Palestine. It's a Trojan horse. It's about radical Islam. It's about terrorism. It's about destabilizing the West. I've spoken a lot about the unholy alliance between the red and the black, communism and Islamism. That unholy alliance ruined Iran. And now you're seeing that unholy alliance in Western countries. And so today, I'm really going to be focusing on the United States. So let's play this video from this, American named Abdullah, and let's see what Abdullah has to say.
We did not act enough. We did not act enough. We did not act enough. Repeat after me. We did not act enough. We did not act enough. If we acted enough. If we acted enough. The headline behind me would read. Gaza has been liberated. So our work is not done. We must show up. We must show up. Stronger than we did the first October 7th. Louder than we did the first October 7th. To make it clear that we are not going anywhere. We will keep fighting until Palestine is free. From the river to the sea. Within our lifetime. Make some noise.
That's the flag of Hamas, by the way. So see the screen flag here? That's the flag of Hamas. So there you have it. They're not mincing words. They're making it clear exactly who they are and what they want. They don't care about peace. For them, it's about massacring Jews. It's about genocide. It's about Islamic colonization. And they're not going to stop because the end goal is colonization. That's what they're trying to do in Israel. That's what they're trying to do in the United States. And it is crazy to me. It is crazy to me that it only took 24 years for New York City to become what it is today. 9/11 was only 24 years ago, when Islamic terrorism caused, well, we know what happened on 9/11, right? 2 planes flew into the World Trade Tower centers, and over 3,000 people were murdered in the name of Islamic terrorism. And now 24 years later, Islamic terrorists are parading the streets of New York City, waving the flag of Hamas, saying that they're going to repeat October 7 over and over again. What happened? What happened in the United States? And why isn't anyone saying anything? Well, thankfully, people are starting to speak up. And I'm going to go through quite a bit of Congressman Randy Fine's tweets because I think it's going to give some good perspective. He does a number of interviews as well. If you don't follow him on X, I highly recommend that you do. Because he's not afraid to call it out. He's not afraid to point out exactly what's happening, and he is not mincing words. And let me tell you, when it comes to dealing with Islamic terrorists and when it comes to dealing with jihad and Islamofascism, you cannot mince words. You simply can't, because they're not mincing words. You heard him. He said, let me be clear. We will repeat October 7 over and over again until we eradicate all the Jews. Right? So he says, Muslims openly calling for the murder of Christians and Jews in America. Fear of Islam is rational. Religion of peace. The religion of peace line is insane, by the way. My understanding, and someone can correct me on this, but my understanding is that the religion of peace quote started as like it was said in irony, like it was said in a satirical way. And then eventually it was picked up and turned around. And now all of a sudden people say the religion of peace. There is nothing peaceful about Islam, guys. There's nothing peaceful about it, especially when you look at how Islamic conquest happens. It's the same MO everywhere. I mean, just look at Nigeria. Look at what's happening there. Okay. So now this is interesting. So he's starting to call out Mamdani. A lot of people are starting to call out Mamdani, Ted Cruz, President Trump, some others. But Congressman Randy Fine doesn't hold back. So here he says Mamdani is little more than a Muslim terrorist. It's a disgrace he was ever granted citizenship. You don't have a right to live in this country if you support war criminals. Now, what's interesting about Mamdani, let me find this video, because it's not just Mamdani. It's the entire family that seems to be involved in some sort of Islamic terrorism or I don't know, hatred. Not Islamic terrorism, but hatred against America, right? It's very, very bizarre to have, this family immigrated to the United States, and yet they seem to hate America. It's very bizarre. Like, so this is his father. This is his father. Watch what, oh, let me close this. Here we go. Watch what his father has to say here.
America is the genesis of what we call settler colonialism. And the American model was exported all around the world. Abraham Lincoln generalized the solution of reservations. They herded American Indians into separate territories. For the Nazis, this was the inspiration. Hitler realized two things. One, that genocide was doable. It is possible to do genocide. That's what Hitler realized. Second thing Hitler realized is that you don't have to have a common citizenship. You can differentiate between people. The Nuremberg laws were patterned after American laws. Anyway, the US put Indians in reservations. The US invented the model.
So there you have it. Mamdani's father is basically saying America is a settler colonial state, right? That's like the Islamist Marxist terminology that is used as a way to destabilize Western societies, right? So America is a settler colonial state. Abraham Lincoln engaged in genocide. And then here's the other crazy part that a lot of people haven't picked up on. He says that the Nazis were inspired by Abraham Lincoln to like, he basically says the Holocaust that the Nazis did against the Jewish people was inspired by Abraham Lincoln, which is insane. It's absolutely wild. Let me show you who, in fact, inspired Hitler to engage in the genocide of the Jewish people. Okay. It's this person here. Do you see that? The guy sitting next to Hitler? That's the Grand Mufti of Palestine or whatever. Like, he was basically the Arab leader in British Mandate Palestine. Here he is speaking with Hitler, and it was this guy. Okay, he was the so-called Arab leader of the, Arab Palestinians. He inspired Hitler to start the final solution against the Jewish people. The Holocaust was inspired by Arabs in Palestine. And yet Mamdani's father is engaging in historical revisionism, and he's basically blaming what the Nazis did on Abraham Lincoln. Do you see how they're like bringing in these lies? And his statements go completely, like, no one fact checks him. Everyone just believes it. So let me play this again. And guys, listen again. So he's basically criticizes the very foundation of the United States, okay, which is the rhetoric that is used by communists and Islamists when they want to destabilize a society. He says that Abraham Lincoln was a genocider, and then he says that the Nazis were inspired by Abraham Lincoln. Can you imagine, like, how insulted would you be as an American if, this foreigner comes to your country, immigrates to your country, becomes a citizen of your country, and then automatically starts attacking not just your country, but very important historical figures that helped build your country? Do you see how they're trying to attack the very foundations of what makes the United States? Listen to this.
America is the genesis of what we call settler colonialism. And the American model was exported all around the world. Abraham Lincoln generalized the solution of reservations. They herded American Indians into separate territories. For the Nazis, this was the inspiration. Hitler realized two things. One, that genocide was doable. It is possible to do genocide. That's what Hitler realized. Second thing Hitler realized is that you don't have to have a common citizenship. You can differentiate between people. The Nuremberg laws were patterned after American laws. Anyway, the US put Indians in reservations. The US invented the model.
Wow. There you go. So that's Mamdani's father. His mother apparently got funding from Qatar to direct and produce movies that spread Qatari propaganda. And now this guy has come, and I can only imagine what's going to happen. So of course, politicians are speaking out. So let's go back, and I want to take you through the several tweets of Congressman Randy Fine, because you can see that after this video, okay, where Muslims are calling for the murder of Christians and Jews in America, he realizes, okay, like something's not right here. Something's not right. And he's waking up. So let's go through this progression and let's see what exactly he has been saying and doing, because this is like more people need to see his tweets and more people need to understand what he is saying. And again, if he was a politician in Canada, he would have been accused of Islamophobia right away. So here he says, okay, so this is on October 9, right? So the pro-Hamas, pro-Palestine demonstrations are still happening in the United States, even though a peace treaty is on the table, right? So Congressman Brad Knott says, simple question. If there actually was a genocide in Gaza, which, we all know there was no genocide in Gaza, shouldn't there be praise and thanks to POTUS from all of the Palestinians and Free Palestine and, Rashida and Code Pink? But there wasn't. Remember when the peace deal happened and when the ceasefire started, there was no thanks from all of the pro-Hamas people. Instead, they're now calling for the complete eradication of Israel because it was never about peace with them. They literally started the war. They started the war and then they played victim because Israel responded as rightfully it should have, right? Self-defense. And now that there's a ceasefire, they're continuing to call for the eradication of Israel. And Congressman Randy Fine points it out correctly. He says the only genocide was October 7th. Of course, the genocide was when Hamas and Palestinians, not just Hamas terrorists, Palestinian civilians as well, were involved in October 7th, right? This was never about Gaza. They told us what they wanted. From the river to the sea, globalize the intifada. Peace was never their goal. Conquest was. And thanks to POTUS, it looks like they will lose. And then here again, so he calls it out, right? Here you can see that he's starting to notice a pattern. Okay, he's starting to notice a pattern because these pro-Hamas, pro-Palestine demonstrations are continuing to happen on a regular basis, not just in the United States, but in Canada, in the UK, and in other parts. But do you know where these pro-Hamas, pro-Palestine demonstrations are not happening right now? They're not happening in the Middle East. You don't see pro-Palestine demonstrations in Saudi Arabia. You don't see pro-Palestine demonstrations in Jordan. You don't see pro-Palestine demonstrations in the United Arab Emirates, in Egypt, in Bahrain. You don't see any pro-Pali demonstrations in the Middle East. Why are you only seeing them in Western countries? And Randy Fine is starting to pick up on that. He's starting to realize, something is not right here, right? This is the warning that I've been trying to give you. You know what? I started warning people about this 2 years ago when I was still an elected official. The National Council of Canadian Muslims didn't like that. They didn't like the fact that I was pointing out that this is radical Islam and that this behavior is not tolerated in the Middle East. This behavior is not tolerated in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is a 100% like Muslim country, right? I mean, it's the birthplace of Islam. And Saudi Arabia does not allow pro-Palestine demonstrations like this. Why? Because Muslims understand the difference between their religion and Islamic terrorism. Now, I'm not here to talk about, religion and religious beliefs. That's not my goal. My goal with these podcasts is to educate you on Islamic terrorism. And what I'm trying to say is that when this behavior is banned in Muslim countries in the Middle East, that should send a signal to Westerners that maybe you should be paying attention to what Middle Eastern politicians are saying. Because these demonstrations are not organic. This is a planned invasion by Islamists who want to basically destabilize your societies and take over. The same way that they did it, exactly what they did to Iran in 1979. Where are these demonstrations in Middle Eastern countries? If someone can show me one pro-Palestine demonstration in a Middle Eastern country, since the ceasefire, let me know. I haven't seen any. So here on October 11 was another, pro-Palestine, which is basically pro-terrorism, pro-jihad demonstration. This one was on October 11, right? And so they say, hundreds of thousands marching for Palestine in London. We won't stop campaigning until Israel's occupation and apartheid is ended and Palestine is free from the river to the sea. There's no occupation. There's no apartheid, right? But what they're calling for, right? This is code for the eradication of Israel. And again, this is an image that you would expect to see maybe in the Middle East. But instead, you're seeing this in London, United Kingdom. But you're not seeing this in the Middle East. Middle Eastern countries do not allow this type of behavior. You know why? Because this is Islamic terrorism. This is radicalism. This is jihad. This is all organized and planned, and the funding goes back to the Muslim Brotherhood. And Hamas, Hamas is the Palestinian branch of the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood is a terrorist organization that is actually banned in several Muslim countries, including Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Egypt. They have banned the Muslim Brotherhood because the Muslim Brotherhood is a radical jihadi organization that is bent on destabilization and is basically intent on having Sharia law take over everywhere. And you have to ask yourself, if Saudi Arabia has banned an organization called the Muslim Brotherhood because it's terrorism, do you not think that maybe Saudi Arabia knows something about Islam versus Islamic terrorism. There's a video from the Foreign Affairs Minister of the United Arab Emirates. I've shown it before, but I'll show it again because, you know, you can't show it enough. You can't show it enough. So this is the Foreign Affairs Minister, Sheikh Abdullah bin Zayed, okay? And he has been warning the West about radicalism and terrorism for years. And here's what he said, okay? Remember, Islam is the United Arab Emirates official religion, okay? So these, like, they're all Muslims, right? It's a Muslim majority country. And yet listen to what he says about Islamic terrorism and radicalism in the West, okay? This is what he said in 2017.
And let me say this in English so you can understand what I'm saying.
I have translation.
No, I know you have translation, but I just want to make sure you get it right. There will come a day that we will see far more radical extremists and terrorists coming out of Europe because of lack of decision-making, trying to be politically correct, or assuming that they know the Middle East and they know Islam and they know the others far better than we do. And I'm sorry, but that's pure ignorance.
Did you guys catch that? I have some starred messages. Mr. K, thank you. Thank you so much for the super sticker. I appreciate that. STF1246, how peculiar Israel prefers ISIS to Shia militia. That's like the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. What makes you think that Israel prefers ISIS to Shia militia? ISIS is in Iraq murdering Christians and Yazidis and Druze. What does that have to do with Israel? Like, these are the weird conspiracy theories that people bring up. And I never understand, like, where is this logic coming from? Where is this logic coming from that Israel prefers ISIS? Like, that's like, it's ridiculous. It's insane. I think you're missing a few brain cells, buddy. Like, these weird conspiracy theories just make you look stupid. I don't know what else to say. But I mean, if you don't believe me, listen to this guy. I'm going to play it again. So again, he is the Foreign Affairs Minister of the UAE, United Arab Emirates, officially a Muslim country, okay? And he is warning the West about Islamic terrorism. So these aren't my words. These are the words of a devout practicing Muslim. And he is warning the West about Islamic terrorism, right? Because those of us from the Middle East, we understand that there is inherently a radical faction that must be controlled, must be subdued, must be eradicated. Watch this again.
And let me say this in English so you can understand what I'm saying.
I have translation.
No, I know you have translation, but I just want to make sure you get it right. There will come a day that we will see far more radical extremists and terrorists coming out of Europe because of lack of decision-making, trying to be politically correct, or assuming that they know the Middle East and they know Islam and they know the others far better than we do. And I'm sorry, but that's pure ignorance.
100% true. 100% true. People who are from the Middle East understand the Middle East more than those who don't. And that's part of the reason that I'm doing these podcasts, these daily live streams, is to start introducing Middle East politics to you guys and to give you some input and insight into the truth about the Middle East, right? The truth about Islamic terrorism. Because for a very long time, these Islamic terrorists and the Muslim Brotherhood that have infiltrated the West, they purposely conflate Muslims and Islamic terrorism. And I'll show you a good example with Mehdi Hassan, the Islamist. But they purposely conflate the two, right? They do that because they want to confuse people who are not from the Middle East. And they want people to assume that those of us who criticize Islamic terrorism, those of us who criticize Islamists, those of us who call out jihadi behavior, that, you know, we're not actually doing that. We're just calling out the religion. No, we're not. We're calling out Islamic terrorism. There's a difference between the two. And this Muslim politician 10 years ago, well, 8 years ago, well, almost 9 years ago, this Muslim politician in 2017 said, there's going to be a time when you have more extremists and radicals coming out of Europe because Western politicians don't understand Islam, don't understand the Middle East, and they're going to be too afraid to call it out because if they do, they're going to be labeled as Islamophobic. That's basically what he's saying. Got some messages here. Thank you. So Yoav says, okay, you always have the best comments. Funny how everyone who calls her propagandists are named Mahmoud, Shabir, Ali, Farhan, Ibrahim, Abbas. It's never a Nigel or a Bubba Ray. That's very true. Very true. And Douglas, thank you for the super sticker. I appreciate your support. Okay. So there you heard it. There you heard it. The Foreign Affairs Minister of the United Arab Emirates, a Muslim, warning non-Middle Easterners about the threat of radicalism in their countries. He warned the West 8 years ago. It took 8 years for his prediction to come true. It only took, well, less than 8 years because these demonstrations started on October 7, 2023. Okay, these pro-Hamas, pro-Pali demonstrations started on October 2023. So it only took 6 years for his prediction to come true. It took 6 years for the Islamists and jihadists to gain so much strength and power and gain that critical mass in Western European, North American countries for the radicalism to begin. So this morning goes directly to that video, right? So let me play both of these again back to back because this should provide you with the context, right? Let me get this video ready first. Okay, so I'm going to play this morning from 7-8 years ago. Okay, I'm going to play his warning and then I'm going to show you the video from October 7 just a few weeks ago. Watch it again.
And let me say this in English so you can understand what I'm saying.
I have translation.
No, I know you have translation, but I just want to make sure you get it right. There will come a day that we will see far more radical extremists and terrorists coming out of Europe because of the lack of decision-making, trying to be politically correct, or assuming that they know the Middle East and they know Islam and they know the others far better than we do. And I'm sorry, but that's pure ignorance.
So there's that. That was 8 years ago. Now look at this video. Watch this video from 2 weeks ago.
We did not act enough. We did not act enough. We did not act enough. Repeat after me. We did not act enough. We did not act enough. If we acted enough. If we acted enough. The headline behind me would read. Gaza has been liberated. So our work is not done. We must show up. We must show up. Stronger than we did the first October 7th. Louder than we did the first October 7th. To make it clear that we are not going anywhere. We will keep fighting until Palestine is free. From the river to the sea. Within our lifetime. Make some noise.
It took 8 years. It took 8 years from the time the foreign affairs minister of the United Arab Emirates warned the West about the threat of radical Islam in their countries, to this guy named Abdullah, who is a graduate student at Harvard, saying that they want to repeat October 7th over and over again in America, waving the flag of Hamas. Hamas is a designated terrorist organization. Where's the flag? There you go. That right there, that's the flag of Hamas. Openly waving the flags of terrorists in the streets in the United States. In New York City, by the way, in New York City, the site of the 9/11 attacks that Muslim terrorists did on September 11, 2021. So you can see why people like Congressman Randy Fine are starting to speak out, because they're starting to notice a pattern here. They're starting to notice a pattern, and now they're starting to slowly take action. So let's continue with his tweets. So on October 12, he actually says, foreigners who support Sharia law must never be allowed to come into our country or stay at all if they are still here. This is an ideology that wants to destroy the West, openly supports pedophilia, and oppresses women. Proud to co-sponsor Republican Chip Roy's bill to stop America from becoming a Muslim nation. Every member of Congress should co-sponsor it. So let's see if we can find this bill. And let's see what exactly it says. So Randy Fine, what's it called here? Sharia free. Okay. So this is a press release from Congressman Randy Fine's office. So he introduces the No Sharia Act. Washington, D.C. Last week, Congressman Randy Fine introduced the No Sharia Act, which prohibits the application of Sharia in the United States where it would violate constitutional rights. Sharia is a threat to Western civilization and is in direct conflict with the founding principles in the Constitution. These practices undercut the American values of freedom and undermine the idea of assimilation into American culture, which has been the bedrock for immigrants' success in this country. It also strips away the rights of women, children, and religious minorities that are central to the American way of life. As someone whose country was taken over by Sharia law in 1979, I can confirm that everything he says is 100% accurate. Iran was a normal Western secular country prior to 1979. In 1979, the Islamic Republic took over. They implemented Sharia law, and overnight, the country went back 1,400 years. It is now an Islamic dictatorship. It's basically an Islamic hellhole that's governed by Sharia law. Women have no rights. Children have no rights. Religious minorities are persecuted. So everything he's saying is 100% correct. Let me be crystal clear. Sharia law has no place in the United States of America. Guys, Sharia law has no place anywhere in the world. Sharia law is backwards and it is evil. We cannot and will not allow for foreign values to overtake our country's legal system. We've seen what has happened in the UK and across Europe with the spread of Sharia, and it is not an exaggeration to say it is coming here next. Well, we are not going to let that happen. What you're seeing happening in Europe right now, it reminds me of what was happening in Iran and also in Lebanon. Iran was not an Islamic country until the Islamists came in and implemented Sharia law. Lebanon used to be a majority Christian country. After the Islamists colonized Iran, they then sent their proxy forces to Lebanon created Hezbollah, an Islamic terrorist organization. And then Hezbollah has now destabilized Lebanon, and also Lebanon is not a majority Christian country anymore, thanks to Islamic colonization. Congressman Fine continued, if you think an adolescent girl in a wedding dress next to a 50-year-old man is cultural, you've lost your soul. This is America. We don't stone women for speaking. We don't hang people in the streets for the world to watch and celebrate. He's not exaggerating, guys. That's what Sharia law does. That's what happens to women and men in Iran. Women are stoned to death for adultery. Women and men are hanged publicly in the streets. It's a horrific, horrific sight. So he's not exaggerating when he says that. That is Sharia law, guys. That happens. It happens every day. And I'm just talking about Iran. I'm not even referring to the horrors in Afghanistan and, some other countries as well. He continues, we don't force little girls into marriage or mutilate their genitals in the name of religion. This is not and will never be our America. And the fact that we even have to consider passing a preemptive bill to protect our families and communities from it is disturbing. But this is the world we live in today. America is a free country that adheres to the Constitution, in which no legal code of Sharia can establish the standards for our rights, liberties, and justice system. This landmark legislation ensures that no U.S. court, public agency, or legal institution can ever enforce or legitimize Sharia law when it conflicts with the U.S. Constitution. Congressman Randy Fine will continue to fight to ensure that our country remains a free country. Guys, he's not exaggerating about the importance of preempting Sharia law. I'm going to find another video for you because this happened recently in the United States. I believe it was in Texas. Let me find this. Gosh. It was these people who were in the United States. If anyone knows what I'm talking about, if you can find it for me. It was a video of like these Muslims in some state in the United States, and they were going to various Muslim-owned businesses, and they basically said to them, you have to stop selling alcohol and lottery tickets because it's haram, and we're giving you a warning to become Sharia compliant. It was something like that. Let's see if I can find it. Here we go. Okay, here we go. I found it. So this was Amy Meck. This was from August, right? So she talks about Sharia patrols. Last week, I reported that Masjid al-Tawhid in Houston, a tax-exempt Nation of Islam mosque, was proudly flying the Palestinian flag. Their imam even boasted about it. Okay. Now he's marching through Houston neighborhoods, pressuring Muslim-owned stores to follow Sharia law. He's demanding they stop selling alcohol, pork, or lottery tickets and warning Muslims to boycott any shop that doesn't comply. He says openly, we should love what Allah does and hate what Allah hates. And let's be clear, according to Islamic texts, what Allah hates includes unbelievers themselves. So this is her commentary. So here's what's happening in the United States, guys. So if you think that, you're in the United States, Sharia law is never going to come, you're free from it. I mean, no one is exempt. No one is exempt, guys. And, right now they're a small mass, but imagine what happens if they reach a critical mass, let's say in 1 or 2 generations, right? So watch this video. Let's watch it together. And then this puts Congressman Randy Fine's no Sharia bill into context, right? Like he's not just coming up with this out of the blue. He's obviously reacting to something this is what he's reacting to, stuff like this. Like, these people are in America. They're going to American stores, right? Like, again, I can understand, like you go to Muslim majority countries, there's no pork. Some, don't sell alcohol, whatever. Although, what's interesting is when I went to Morocco in the summer, okay, Morocco is 100% Muslim country. No pork, whatever. I don't eat pork anyway, just a preference. But they sold alcohol. Like, Muslim stores sold alcohol, okay? So even in Muslim majority countries, even in countries governed by Islamic law or whatever, there are still people selling alcohol, okay? Because, at the end of the day, it's a choice. Some Muslims want to drink, some Muslims don't drink. And they have that freedom of choice, right? What you're seeing here are the radicals. What you're seeing here are the Islamists, right? The people who want to force strict Sharia law on everyone else, right? This is what the foreign affairs minister of the United Arab Emirates was talking about when he says there will come a day when the radicals are going to come out of Europe and now North America. This is what he's referring to. These radicals, right? That they just want to ban everything. And it is this ideology that took over Iran in 1979 and turned it into an Islamic hellhole that it is today. I mean, you guys want to know what Sharia law is or what it does? Just look at Iran. Look at videos of Iran before 1979 versus after 1979. Okay? I have a lot of those on my channel as well. You can go and look at my other live streams. And, I do talk about Iran quite a bit because what happened to Iran was sort of like the testing grounds. So I know exactly what Sharia law is, and I know exactly what it does because we've experienced it and we're still experiencing it in Iran. And now you have these Islamists in the United States, right, who are going around, they're threatening other Muslims and saying you cannot sell alcohol or pork or anything like that because it's haram. They're trying to force people to follow their religion in the United States. Let's watch together.
Beloved brothers and beloved sisters. My beloved brothers and beloved sisters here. We're here in Houston, Texas, in the United States of America. We're from Masjid al-Tawheed. We're standing near a store, a community service store that is owned and operated by a Muslim. The Muslim Islamic code is that we avoid the use and the sale and distribution of pork, alcohol, and gambling products. We ask them not to do this. We can't stop them. Of course, this is the United States of America, and people have the freedom to sell what they want as long as they're supported by the United States government. But in Islam, we have higher principles. So we are asking all the Muslim business people and Muslim merchants to have a higher standard of quality that complements the religion of Islam. If you say that you're Muslim, you should avoid alcohol, pork, and...
So do you see how he's basically saying, sure, we have the American Constitution, but Islam takes precedence. Islam is more important. American Constitution, whatever, Islam, right? That's basically what he's saying. And this is just a very tiny number. This is a very small number. Imagine what would happen if, their numbers increase.
Gambling products and do the best for the community. You should want for your brother what you want for yourself. Of course, you have the right to sell what you want, but as a Muslim, you should have a higher principles, higher code of ethics that is supported by the Quran and the Sunnah of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. So we are letting the community know that they can patronize them if they want. But one question we would like for you to ask them before you give them your money, ask them, where do they live? Do they really care about this community enough to live around us? We care about the community, we love you, and we care. We want the best for you. So we are letting the community know and letting all the Muslim merchants know who say they are Muslim, who say that they follow the Sunnah of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, who say that they follow the Quran, to do the very best for the community, to show the very best and have the best products and not violate the religion of Islam by selling and distributing products that are against the religion, because we should love what Allah loves and we should hate what Allah hates. So
Oh, so we should, so he's saying that not only should we love what Allah loves, but we should hate what Allah hates. First of all, what business is it of his or anyone else's what someone sells in their store? Like, how is it any of your business? How does it impact you in any way, shape whatsoever? What gives you the right to go to another individual in the United States, Muslim or not, and demand and dictate for them to behave in a certain way that complies with your beliefs? What gives you the right? Do you see how bold they are? Do you see how they just insert themselves into people's business? This is how Islamists operate. This is their MO.
we're letting everybody know, do what you want, but we want you to know that we care about you, we love you, want you to have the very best, and we want the Muslims to have set a better example of what good merchandising should be. This is what we're here for, and
So he's basically saying anyone who sells alcohol or pork or lottery tickets is setting a bad example. He's basically insulting pretty much everyone who sells alcohol, pork, and lottery tickets.
little by little, one by one, we're going to be visiting all of the stores in the neighborhood, particularly the inner city neighborhoods where the religion of Islam is ignored by not only our enemies. It's bad enough already that the Zionists are imitating Judaism and destroying and killing and having genocide against the Muslims. It's bad enough that we have politicians who sit by and allow and fund the killing of Muslims, the disrespect of the Muslims. But it's a salt in the sore. It's an insult to injury when we have Muslims who don't care about the community. We have Muslim people who say that they're Muslims who don't even care enough about the community, and they're poisoning the community with their drugs, poisoning the community with their alcohol, poisoning the community with their pork, and they don't really care. But we want to let you know that we care about you and we love you and we want the very best for you. Peace be upon you. Assalamu alaikum.
Wow. Doesn't hold back, does he? There's a few other videos of him. Let me find this. Let me find this guy. Amy Meck has she has some other videos of this guy who's basically like threatening, like they're threatening Muslims. They're threatening Muslims in America. You would never see this. Okay. Let's find it. I think it was, no, let me find. See if I can find it. But that gives you, like, that should give you a really good example, right, of how the Islamists are trying to bring Sharia law to the United States. And so now you can understand why someone like Congressman Randy Fine is introducing a No Sharia Act, right? It's basically to protect Americans, right? It's also meant to protect American Muslims from Islamic extremism, because again, right, it's not the normal regular Muslims who are doing this. It's the Islamists. It's like the radical jihadi ones, right? The ones that the Foreign Affairs Minister of the United Arab Emirates is warned us about years ago. So that's what Congressman Randy Fine did, right? Because he's starting to see the creep. He's starting to see the creep of Islamism in the United States, where now you have these Muslims, so-called Muslims, going around threatening other Muslims, dictating to them how they should live. And it always starts that way. It always starts with, them going after Muslims, and then they reach a critical mass, and then they start going after non-Muslims. It's always been the same pattern here. So Here we go. So this is a very good interview here. So this is where Randy Fine, he starts noticing, right? He starts noticing that the Hamas terrorist sympathizers have gone silent after a peace deal was reached, right? So he's starting to connect the dots here, something that I've been trying to point out for a while to people. And he says, the pro-Hamas demonstrations in the United States were never about genocide, Palestinians, or Gaza. It was a war of civilizations against the West. That's what we have been saying. Western civilization is at risk because you have this jihad that has been slowly, quietly infiltrating. Okay? The enemy is not at the gates. The enemy is already inside your house. Watch this.
But you know what I'm more concerned than the rhetoric on October 7th is the silence today on October 9th. All of those people who talked about genocide and everything is terrible, they should be the ones celebrating a peace deal that ends a supposed genocide. But they're all quiet. They've all gone silent. Why is that? Because this was never about Gaza. This was never about so-called Palestinians. This was about a war of civilizations against the West. And let's get Gaza brought in for a landing. Let's get the Israel situation brought in for a landing. But then we as a country have to make sure we don't end up like what I call the United Islamic Kingdom, which has fallen to Islam. And we can't allow that to happen here. And we're going to have to deal with that long after this situation is resolved. But you know what I'm more concerned than the rest?
There you go. So he doesn't hold back. He calls it out. And he says exactly what the rest of us have been saying, that this was never about Gaza. Gaza is just the Trojan horse. Gaza has always been the Trojan horse for jihad and Islamic radicalism. That's why you see these pro-Hamas demonstrations in the United States, but you don't see them in Muslim Arab countries. Do you know what would happen to that Abdullah guy, you know, the one in New York who said we're going to repeat October 7th over and over again? Do you know what would happen to him if he said that in the UAE? He would probably be jailed and deported. If he said that in Saudi Arabia, he would be jailed for sure, right? The things that these Islamists are saying in North America and Europe, they would not be allowed to say this in Middle Eastern countries because they know that it's radicalism, it's jihad, right? It's meant to destabilize, it's meant to glorify and encourage terrorism. And Randy Fine is starting to pick up on that, as well as some other American politicians. So here he now tweets, October 15, he says, President Trump puts an end to the war in Gaza. And notice how silent the Free Palestine crowd is all of a sudden. Crickets from Ilhan Omar and the Hamas caucus. For Muslim terrorists, this was never about having peace in Gaza. It was always about their hatred of Jews, Judeo-Christian values, and destroying Israel. First, they come for the Saturday people, then they come for the Sunday people. And how true is that? Because that's exactly what's happening in Nigeria right now. The Muslims are genociding the Nigerian Christians. And I spoke about that last week. I spoke about the Nigerian genocide. I actually have an update for you guys on the Nigerian genocide. So you want to stick around or you want to join on Thursday. We're going to get an update on the Nigerian genocide and what's happening there. But he's absolutely right. First, they come for the Saturday people, then they come for the Sunday people. And here's another clip of an interview. Let's watch this one.
They won't say anything because for them, this was a failure. This was never about Palestinians. It was never about Gaza. It was about anti-Semitism and destroying Israel. If it was, they'd be speaking up because apparently Hamas and other Palestinian groups are slaughtering each other right now. But there's no protests. There's no encampments. There's no speaking out about that. The squad is infected with a hatred of Jews. And you can see it, you know, with one of their other titular leaders, Mamdani, running in New York, who literally went to go raise money for Hamas just the other day. So for them, it's a terrible day, and it's why you don't see them speaking about it. They won't say anything because for them.
Yep, 100% true. And he's right. Where all these, you know, pro-Palestine, free Palestine people, where have they been since Hamas started slaughtering Palestinians, since Palestinians started killing each other? I did a live stream about that 2 weeks ago. You can go back and take a look. I go through it all. And yet crickets from all of these pro-Hamas, pro-Palestine people, because it was never about Gaza. It was about the eradication of Israel and destabilizing the United States. Okay. So this is interesting. This is an interesting update from X, and I'm glad. So to me, the reason I highlighted this is because I wanted to point out that Elon Musk seems to also be noticing the threat of radical terrorism. And this update on X is really good. This update, I think, is going to be very eye-opening, because X will begin to display what country an account is posting from. This is going to expose all of the bots and all of the, fake accounts and the rage bait accounts and, all of like the literally every single jihadi account is going to be exposed. And Congressman Randy Fine says, fantastic news. I've been asking for this for a while, given all the Muslim terror accounts that post on my page. About 40% of the comments on my page are foreign. Fun fact, for every comment from Israel, I get 60 from Pakistan, Yemen, Qatar, Iran, Egypt, Turkey, etc. Iran, of course, he means the Islamic Republic. It's going to be interesting, though, to see how many of those accounts actually show Iran, and I'll explain why, because X is actually banned in Iran. The Islamic Republic has banned social media, okay? So any Iranian who uses social media to try to raise awareness about what's happening in Iran, they are jailed. They're usually executed, okay? This actually happened recently. I did another podcast about it, where the Islamic Republic was able to identify one of the anonymous Iranian accounts who has been raising awareness and trying to overthrow the Islamic Republic. They arrested him, they jailed him, they've been torturing him, and he's most likely going to be executed, which is incredibly horrific. So most Iranians inside the country have to use a VPN in order to speak, and also in order to, go around the ban. So they need a VPN, first of all. And second of all, they can't identify who they are or anything, because that's illegal. But what's interesting is that there are pro-Islamic regime accounts on X who display their name, who display their image, and they are free to tweet on X, even though X is banned inside of the Islamic Republic. So it's going to be very interesting to see where those, jihadi anonymous accounts who claim they are Iranian or support, the Islamic Republic, it's going to be very interesting to see where they are located. So I'm definitely excited for this update. I think this is going to add a lot of clarity and accountability, especially with all of the pro-Hamas, pro-Palestine, pro-Islamic Republic accounts on X right now. Okay. So he continues, Sharia law has no place in America. My No Sharia Act makes sure that it stays that way. Thank you, Senator Tuberville, for introducing the Senate's companion bill. We're now up to 15 co-sponsors on the House side. Let's get this bill across the finish line. So Congressman Randy Fine's No Sharia Act has also been introduced in the Senate. So now that's going through both the House and the Senate. So, I mean, it's good. It's kind of a big deal. Okay. So now, here he says, Mamdani needs to be reported, either back to his dad's mansion in Uganda or his pals in Gaza. Let him pick, but get him the hell out of here. What would prompt Congressman Randy Fine to say something like that? Well, let's look at this clip from Mamdani, okay? And then this is literally McCallum saying, should Hamas give up their weapons? He says, I believe that a future here in New York City is affordable for all. Wow. Okay.
Into one that's affordable for each and every New Yorker.
But okay, I want to get to that absolutely. But do you believe that Hamas should lay down their weapons and leave the leadership in Gaza?
I believe that any future here in New York City is one that we have to make sure that's affordable for all. And as it pertains to Israel and Palestine, that we have to ensure that there's peace And that is the future that we have to fight for.
But you won't say that Hamas should lay down their arms and give up leadership in Gaza.
I don't really have opinions about the future of Hamas and Israel beyond the question of justice and safety and the fact that anything has to abide by international law. And that applies to Hamas, that applies to the Israeli military, applies to anyone you could ask me about.
Okay.
So he has no problem criticizing Israel and criticizing the government of Israel. He has no problem giving his opinions on, Israel and what he thinks about Israel. But when it comes to Hamas, he says nothing. Okay. He says, oh, it's not my place to say anything. That's insane because this is, when is this from? This is from October 15. So the official American policy with respect to Hamas is that, first of all, it's a terrorist organization. Second of all, one of the critical terms of the ceasefire agreement is for Hamas to lay down their arms and to demilitarize. So for someone who wants to be a politician in the United States, it should be very, very easy to say, yes, I think Hamas should lay down its arms. That's the American policy. And I'm an American. I support America, right? You would think he would say that. But instead, he's completely silent on it. He tries to avoid the question. It's obvious he doesn't want to upset someone. Who do you think that someone is? I'm thinking it's probably his jihadi base, right? His jihadi base and his donors. He doesn't want to say anything that would upset them. It's wild. And it's so obvious too. It's so obvious. Watch this again.
That's affordable for each and every New Yorker.
But okay, I want to get to that, absolutely. But do you believe that Hamas should lay down their weapons and leave the leadership in Gaza?
I believe that any future here in New York City is one that we have to make sure that's affordable for all. And as it pertains to Israel and Palestine, that we have to ensure that there is peace. And that is the future that we have to fight for.
But you won't say that Hamas should lay down their arms and give up leadership in Gaza.
I don't really have opinions about the future of Hamas and Israel beyond the question of justice and safety and the fact that anything has to abide by international law. And that applies to Hamas, that applies to the Israeli military, applies to anyone you could ask me about.
Okay. One last thought on that. You have said that you would arrest Netanyahu if he came to the United States. You've been very outspoken.
Yeah, that was actually a really stupid comment for him to say he's going to arrest Netanyahu. The United States is not even party to the Rome Statute. So the ICC has no jurisdiction or authority in the United States. For him to say that he would arrest Netanyahu, he's pandering to his jihadi, anti-Israel base, basically. So it's wild. It's wild that he would say, okay, on one hand, he has no problem saying that he would arrest Netanyahu, even though he has no legal authority to do so. But then on the other hand, he won't even call out Hamas, and he won't say that Hamas is terrorists and they have to be disarmed. He never says that. Do you notice a pattern here? Okay. Oh, this is interesting. So now here he is starting to go after Mehdi Hassan. So you can now see the progression here where Randy Fine is paying more and more attention to the Islamists who have infiltrated America. Now, this is actually a very, very interesting one because I'm going to get to where he ends up with this eventually. So Mehdi Hassan, the Islamist, right? Says they don't hide their Islamophobia. It's just hoods off all the time on the right these days. Mehdi Hassan is a kind of Islamist where, you'll breathe and he accuses you of Islamophobia, right? That's just what he is. And he's one of those people that conflates Islam with Islamic terrorism in order to confuse people. Okay, so this is what I was talking about earlier when I said that these Islamists will deliberately lump in the religion with radical jihadi ideology because they want to keep people confused. And then that way, if people think that it's all one and the same, then when you're speaking about Islamic terrorism, they accuse you of Islamophobia, like Mehdi Hassan did. And I actually, I wrote something. I want to share it with you. So I wrote this out yesterday. Here we go. So a few days ago, Mehdi Hassan said, okay, so we got to go back a little bit here, guys. So JD Vance is talking about Mamdani, and he says, according to Zohran, the real victim of 9/11 was his auntie who got some allegedly bad looks. I will get to this particular video because this was absolutely reprehensible, and I will speak about that. But I just want to focus on Mehdi Hasan for a moment. So JD Vance, is criticizing Mamdani for his aunt, which, by the way, turned out to be fake, right? So that Mehdi Hasan responds to JD Vance, okay? And he says, imagine being married to a brown woman and having mixed race kids and then publicly mocking other brown people as they talk publicly and emotionally about their experience of racism. Vance is just a bad person, okay? So he automatically makes it about race, okay? He automatically makes it about race, which is what these Islamists do, right? Like, this is how they try to confuse people. They will take an issue, they'll change it around and add a completely different context to this. So I actually I retweeted him because I was just really fed up with his nonsense. I don't usually retweet and respond, but I was like, this guy is it's absolutely ridiculous. And I put something out there. I don't have a really big account on X. I only have about 97,000 followers. But this tweet is getting a lot of attention. It has 104,000 views, 4.4 thousand likes, almost 800 retweets. So here's what I responded to Mehdi Hasan's comment about brown people. I said, brown people aren't the problem. Islamists like you are the problem. Pretty sneaky and disingenuous of you to equate the two together, especially given what Indian people have suffered at the hands of people like you for the last 1,000 years. Islamists like you have made life a living hell for Hindus ever since Muslims invaded India in 900 AD and forced the weak ones, aka your ancestors, to convert to Islam. How come you never talk about how brown people are treated in the Middle East? Does that hit too close to home? Is that why you lash out at white people? Are you just struggling to find a way to cope with the fact that your masters in Qatar will never see you as an equal no matter how much they pay you? Guys, I haven't even spoken about the issues in India yet because there's so much going on in the Middle East and North America, but I will at some point be speaking about the Islamism problem in India because it is a major problem there. And, not just India, but Bangladesh as well. Guys, it's the same pattern everywhere with the Islamists, right? And there's so many people from around the world who unfortunately have the same experience when it comes to Islamism and Islamic colonization. So that was my response to Mehdi Hasan, right? But this is what they do. They constantly conflate an issue, right? So he's basically JD Vance is speaking about this, rightfully commenting on Zohran Mamdani's ridiculous claim about his aunt. Oh, my aunt in the subway didn't feel safe after 9/11 because she was wearing hijab. What about the 3,000 Americans who were murdered in the name of Islam? What about them? But we'll get to that because that claim was also debunked as well. But so this is what Mehdi Hasan does. He will take a comment. He will say something absolutely stupid and ridiculous in order to promote his own jihadi propaganda, right? So here, he's responding to Congressman Brandon Gill, and he says they don't hide their Islamophobia. It's just hoods off all the time on the right these days. Because apparently, if you criticize someone, it's Islamophobia, right? They want to create an atmosphere where even the tiniest criticism or thought is all of a sudden Islamophobia, right? They're basically trying to introduce blasphemy laws where you cannot say or do anything against their ideology. And if you do, it's Islamophobia. But you have to ask yourself, how come there's no Christian phobia? How come there's no Hindu phobia? How come there's no Jewish phobia or Buddhist phobia or nothing like that? Why is it only Islamophobia? And why is it always the radical Islamists like Mehdi Hasan who just tweet Islamophobia every 2 seconds? It's all intentional, guys. It's all intentional. And then Congressman Randy Fine says, quite rich for a Muslim who calls non-Muslims cattle. Fear of Islam is rational. Islamophobia is a lie. Republican Brandon Gill is dead on. We must end Sharia in America. Yes, Mehdi Hassan did actually call non-Muslims cattle. There's a video. He spoke about this. He lumped in people who listen to music with pedophiles. He said they're basically one and the same. This is how Islamists think and operate. And I shared those videos in a previous live stream. If you go to the live stream from last week, the one where I talk about Americans Fight Back, right? The one with Matt Walsh. The videos are in that live stream. So you can go back to that one. You can find exactly the clips that Congressman Randy Fine is referring to. So now here's where it starts to get interesting. So now he's becoming a little more direct, right? It took him about 10 days to go from noticing that there are people who are calling for jihad in America to this now, because now he's starting to change his attitude a little bit. And he's saying, if you want to destroy America, you do not belong in our country. Sharia law would destroy America. It does not belong in our country. I 100% agree, right? And then he continues. When someone yells, praise Jesus, a Christian is experiencing joy. When someone yells, Baruch Hashem, a Jew is doing the same. But when someone yells, Allahu Akbar, there's a real chance someone is about to get killed. It is not Islamophobic to say this. It is true. And I 100% agree. I actually have made videos explaining that. No one in the Middle East walks around and randomly says Allahu Akbar. Okay? And I'll give you a pro tip. As an Iranian, here's a pro tip for you guys. If you're in a crowded place and someone randomly yells Allahu Akbar, run. Get as far away as you possibly can. It could be a prank, but you don't want to risk it. And if it is a prank, ask yourself, why is it a prank? Right? There's a reason that they might be doing it as a prank. But no one in the Middle East walks around and randomly yells Allahu Akbar. So now we have Laura Loomer, who does a little bit of investigation here. So Zoran Mamdani brags about campaigning at a mosque today with an unindicted co-conspirator in the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. One day after the New York City mayoral debate, Zoran Mamdani is throwing his ties to Islamic terrorists in our faces. He just posted this post about how he campaigned today with Imam Siraj Wahhaj in New York City. I broke the story months ago about Mamdani's ties to Wahhaj. He was an unindicted co-conspirator in the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. He has donated to Mamdani's campaign, and he is still an imam in New York City to this day. Linda Sarsour calls Siraj her mentor. In case you thought it couldn't get worse, Siraj's son, Siraj Wahhaj Jr., ran a jihadi compound in New Mexico where he trained kids to commit terrorist attacks. He and his associates were arrested and jailed for life for training kids on a compound in New Mexico to kill Americans. Authorities said they stockpiled weapons and planned to commit mass murder in the name of Islam. The remains of dead children were also found on the compound. These are the people who are backing Mamdani. This is who's trying to take over New York City. This is what happens when we let jihadists into our country. New York City is about to be engulfed by Islamic terrorism. And then she has the receipts, right? So here's one. Imam, father of Muslim extremist who was found at New Mexico compound with 11 children, was linked to 1993 bombing of World Trade Center and testified for blind sheikh who plotted it. 5 New Mexico compound defendants sentenced to life in prison in connection with kidnapping and terrorism plot. Okay? So like she's not joking. This is real. This is legitimate. Literally. That New Mexico compound, 5 of them were sentenced to life in prison in connection with kidnapping and terrorism. And yet here Zoran is associating with these people. The veracity. Thanks for lifting up civilization. 100%. I agree. We need to defend Western civilization. Western civilization, guys, it is at risk. It is happening. It is happening. Oh, oops. I forgot to share the tab. Here we go. This is what I was speaking about. Imam, father of Muslim extremist, who was found at New Mexico compound with 11 children linked to 1993 bombing of World Trade Center, right? So this imam is linked to a compound. That compound, 5 of those people working at that compound or running it sentenced to life in prison in connection with kidnapping and terrorism. So this guy's connected to that compound. And here, children found in New Mexico compound training for school shootings, prosecutor says, okay? 11 children between the ages of 1 and 15 were found in a makeshift compound in rural New Mexico living in squalid conditions. So this imam connected to that compound, here he is with Zoran. This is the guy that's backing Zoran. Like, that's insane. And, you know, as a former politician, if someone wanted to financially back me for anything, I always did a background check to see who this person is and what this person wants. And there were many times where people were like, I want to donate to your campaign. I want to help you. And then when I looked into their background and I saw how sketchy it was sometimes, I would say, no, thank you. You know, I don't need your money. I don't want to be linked. No politicians or people who want to be politicians, they know exactly what they're doing when they get big sponsors. I'm not talking about, you know, the $5, $100, even $1,000 to, like, you know, $3,000. That's nothing. I'm talking about the big financial donors, right? So this guy, this imam that's connected to the New Mexico compound where they were training kids to be terrorists, is one of the big donors of Zoran Mamdani. This is 24 years after 9/11, guys. This is all happening in the United States. So for those of you who thought, oh, you know, what's happening in the Middle East, all that Islamic terrorism and whatever, it's never going to happen in the United States. It is happening right now in your country. Guys, the enemy is not at the gates. The enemy is already inside your house and has already been elected to office. Look at that jihadi mayor in Dearborn. Look at all the Congress people, like, you know, Randy Fine calls them the Hamas caucus, right? Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar. And now Zoran Mamdani. And look at these connections. They're all connected, right? So Congressman Randy Fine says, the guy is spitting in our faces, bragging about Mamdani's friendship with Muslim terrorists. I can't imagine how the families of the victims of 9/11 feel. Mamdani needs to be denaturalized and deported. So this is the interesting part. So now he's changed the conversation now. Okay. So first, in the beginning, he was speaking about, you know, no Sharia law. We shouldn't, you know, tolerate Sharia law. We need to ban it. So he introduces a bill to ban Sharia law. But now he's realizing that the situation in the United States is much more serious than what he thought, right? Now, many of us, including myself, we know how serious the situation is. In Canada, it's even worse than the United States. In the UK, it's even worse, right? But you can imagine if this is happening in the United States, how much worse it is in Canada and the UK. So he says he's now taking it a step further because he's realizing there's a real and serious threat. It's not just about banning Sharia law to, you know, prevent. It's not about preventing people from coming. It's about dealing with the ones who were able to come in undetected. So now he's starting to think, maybe we need to start cleaning house. Maybe we need to deal with the Islamist problem that we have allowed, that we have imported into our society. And now he's starting to say Mamdani needs to be denaturalized and deported. And I'll tell you something, as someone who is a naturalized citizen of Canada, right? I was born in Iran, came to Canada when I was a year old. My family immigrated here. I became a Canadian citizen at the age of 4. So I'm a naturalized Canadian citizen, okay? I fully support this initiative, and I think we need a similar initiative in Canada. I think anyone who immigrates, I'll use Canada as an example, anyone who immigrates to Canada does not assimilate. Anyone who immigrates to Canada and turns out to be someone who supports Islamic terrorism, if they have managed to become a citizen, I think they need to be denaturalized and deported, because those people are threats, right? That's the Islamic terrorism threat. That's the global jihad, right? They infiltrate into your countries. Once they become citizens, that's when they get very bold. Once they gain citizenship, that's when they can start speaking out and engaging in terrorist activities. So he says Mamdani needs to be denaturalized and deported. Fully agree 100%. So then he goes on Laura Loomer, okay? Tonight I'll be joined by Rep. Andy Fine to discuss his newly introduced bill, the No Sharia Act, designed to make it clear that no U.S. court or public agency should ever enforce Sharia law. So then here's the episode. I'm not going to play it all, but here's a clip. Here's a very interesting clip here. So Laura Loomer says, I spoke with Andy Fine about the growing threat of Islamification in America and why his No Sharia Act is so important right now. We've seen what happens when countries like France and the UK allow for mass Islamic migration with no requirement for assimilation. Now, parts of America like Dearborn, Michigan, and Minnesota are following the same path. Republican Fine's bill already has strong support who want to make sure Sharia law never takes root in America. I told Rep. Fine how important it is that President Trump endorses this legislation. Trump is the only leader who has the courage and influence to stop the Islamification of America before we become a Muslim country. So let's watch this interview together and see exactly what Randy Fine said. And this is October 18th, so about, less than 10 days ago.
I do think we have to be focused on the problem, and the problem is the Islamification of America. We can see what happened in France. We can see what happened in the UK. We can see what happened in Dearborn, and we have to say we don't want that. And again, you're doing a great job of making people understand what's coming, because it's easier to put your head in the sand and say, no, we'll all get along. Everything will be fine. Everything will be fine. It is difficult for people. Part of the reason I think you got so much pushback is agreeing with you was hard. It made people give up some of their comfort about how America works. It's easier to believe everything is easy. And that's the fight that you've been fighting, and I'm grateful for it. And now you've got me in Congress willing to make that fight as well. We got 15 congressmen on the No Sharia Act. Hopefully anybody watching will reach out to theirs and say, why don't they co-sponsor as well? One way to get a bill moving is to get a lot of co-sponsors on it. It shows there's a lot of interest in it.
Who has supported your bill in addition to Senator Tommy Tuberville? I mean, I saw that Congressman Chip Roy was in support of it. I saw that Congresswoman Nancy Mace also introduced a bill to designate the Muslim Brotherhood. Which members of Congress, I mean, that's a separate bill, of course, but which members of Congress thus far have agreed to support your No Sharia Act?
A bunch have. Keith Self introduced it with me. Chip Roy has. Brandon Gill has. Mike Herodopoulos has, Jimmy Petronis. I can't remember the whole list of 15, to be perfectly honest, but it is on my X feed at Rep. Fine if people want to go and take a look. About 15 members, and they're all Republicans, obviously, but 15 have. And we will take as many as want to join, and we're continuing to talk to people about it even during the Democrat shutdown to get more co-sponsors.
Have you talked to President Trump about your legislation, or have you had or requested a meeting at the White House to see if President Trump would endorse your legislation? It seems like this is something that would be right up President Trump's alley, since in 2015 and 2016, he said that Islam hates us. I mean, it was President Trump who campaigned when he first ran for president who said we have a Islam problem. And now all of a sudden, it just seems like, with all of these negotiations and deals with all of the Islamic countries, you don't really hear President Trump talk about Islam anymore, which I hope that he'll start talking about it again, because he really is the only person in my mind that could put a stop to this in the West. He is a truly generational, transformational leader. And I don't really think that we're ever going to have another president like President Trump. And so I view him as being in a very unique position to save the West from the Islamification, which is why it is so important that President Trump endorses this legislation.
Well, I have tried to help President Trump keep away from this sort of stuff because I wanted him to focus on getting the hostages out, which I think was frankly an even bigger priority than this bill. But now that that is done and all of the living hostages have been sent back to Israel, this is on my list of things to be talking about the White House with. I will tell you, you talked about President Trump talking about the issue. I think if Mamdani is elected, he's not going to have a choice. For the largest city in America to become a communist Muslim terror hellscape, that's just unbelievable. And look, if he carries out his
I'm really glad that he also pointed out and mentioned the communism part, right? Because Islamists on their own, it's definitely a threat. But when you add communism to it, that takes it to the next level. In some ways, communism is even more dangerous than Islamism, because everyone sees the Islamists for what they are, a bunch of like savage jihadis, right? But it's the communists that are incredibly dangerous because they can destabilize society, because communism is unfortunately an accepted school of thought in many Western countries. And the whole goal of communism and Marxism and socialism is to destabilize Western societies in order to take over and turn them into a communist society. Communism was banned by the Shah of Iran. Communists are the reason why the Islamic Republic was able to successfully overthrow the Shah in 1979. It was that unholy alliance of red and black. And I spoke about this in my live stream yesterday very briefly. Right now, communism is starting to be banned in certain Western European countries that have dealt with the threat of communism and know exactly how dangerous it is. The most recent example is Czech Republic. Czech Republic recently banned communism. So no one in the Czech Republic can promote communism or, teach it or be a part of it or anything like that, because it is a direct threat to the foundation of that society. The whole point of communism is to destabilize, infiltrate, and take over. Would you consider the Czech Republic to be a dictatorship? Absolutely not. In fact, by banning communism, they are taking the correct approach to preserving their society and protecting it from terrorism, from the militants, from all of that nonsense. And Congressman Andy Fine is starting to see that right now. But unfortunately, the way that Islamists and jihadists operate, right? They take advantage of the freedom of expression, freedom of religion, freedom of, association, freedom of speech in Western countries. They take advantage of your liberties to promote and push for ideas and ideologies that are meant to destabilize your societies, right? That's what the communists do. That's what the Islamists do. They take advantage of the freedoms given to people, freedoms that are meant to bolster society, freedoms that are meant to improve society. They take advantage of those freedoms to push ideologies and thoughts that are inherently dangerous to that society. That's what they have been doing. Now, Congressman Randy Fine is starting to wake up to that. He's waking up to that fact, right? That's why he says he adds communism to the Islamism. That is critical, guys.
Mamdani is elected, he's not going to have a choice. For the largest city in America to become a communist Muslim terror hellscape, that's just unbelievable. And look, if he carries out his threat, and that's what it is, a threat to not participate with ICE, to try to arrest diplomats that he doesn't like when they come into the city, I mean, we're going to have real problems. And I think President Trump will have to engage, if for sure, in a big way if Mamdani does happen to win.
Yeah, that's going to be very interesting because, if Mamdani becomes the mayor of New York City, there seems to be a high probability, I guess, that he will, which is terrifying, absolutely terrifying, given his background and his connections and given, who his father and mother are. The UN is in New York City. Does that mean that when Prime Minister Netanyahu comes to the United Nations next year to do his speech, is Mamdani going to try and arrest him? Based on what? The United States is not a party to the Rome Statute. Of course, most people don't know this because most people are not familiar with international law or how it operates. I used to be an international lawyer for 5 years prior to being an elected official, prior to being a politician. I was in international law for 5 years. So I know all this stuff. On what basis or authority could Mamdani even arrest Netanyahu? And yet he's putting it out there. He's putting it out there to appease to his jihadi base, to appease to the, anti-Semitic base, to appease to the woke left and even the woke right? All the anti-Israel people. What's that? Oh no, that's the comments. Let me go back here. Okay, so there's the video with Laura Loomer, the interview. Here we go. So last night, now Andy Fine is starting to be attacked, right? They're starting to attack him, and he makes it very clear. So this is interesting. So this is going to get into where he goes with this. I have never lived in Israel. My parents never lived in Israel. My grandparents never lived in Israel. My great-grandparents never lived in Israel. I never even visited until I was in my 30s. There's no reason to ask this question other than my religion. I fight for the American-Israeli relationship because we are the only two countries left fighting the greatest threat to Western civilization, mainstream Islam. Guys, there's a reason that the Islamic Republic, which is occupying my birth country of Iran, okay, there's a reason that the Islamic Republic calls America the great Satan and calls Israel the little Satan, right? Because jihadis have been waging war against Western civilization forever. As soon as the Islamic Republic occupied Iran in 1979, they started chanting death to America, death to Israel. They took Americans hostage. Like how quickly did Americans forget that it was the Islamic Republic? As soon as they occupied Iran, they took Americans hostage. They held them hostage for over a year. That's literally the MO of Islamists. That's the MO of jihadis. And then you have to ask yourself, how are they even able to take Americans hostage? That's because prior to 1979, Iran was a normal, regular, Western secular country. Iran was an ally of the United States. And there were lots of Americans who traveled freely to Iran, who worked in Iran, who lived in Iran. I know it seems hard to believe, but that's the truth. That's the reality. But as soon as the Islamists came, as soon as the Islamists took power in Iran and occupied our country, as soon as Sharia law was implemented, that's when the death to America, death to Israel chants started. The problem is not Iran. The problem is that Islamic jihadi ideology. The problem is Islamic terrorism, right? So now he's talking about the No Sharia Act. It has 18 co-sponsors, which is great. Okay, here's the one I wanted to talk about here. So he's doing an interview with CNN and he says, so now he talks about the mayor of Dearborn. Guys, remember I showed you the video of the mayor of Dearborn. Do you remember that one? Where he basically says to the Christian guy, get out of my city. Let me pull it up for you. Here we go. So this is the video, okay? Watch this because this is going to give you context for what Republican Andy Fine is saying. And remember, this is the other piece of the puzzle. So it's not just about Mamdani and his ties and the people who are supporting him. It's not just about that radical Islamist group in Texas who is who are boycotting and attacking Muslim store owners because they want to force Sharia law on Muslims. It's also about Dearborn. Because Dearborn, Michigan is a prime example of what happens when they become the majority. You literally have a mini Sharia city in the United States. Here you go. Watch this.
Hezbollah, bombed the embassy in Beirut, and including many Americans. So I just feel it's quite inappropriate.
You are an Islamophobe, and although you live here, I want you to know, as mayor, you are not welcome here. And the day you move out of the city will be the day that I launch a parade celebrating the fact that you moved out of the city, because you are not somebody who believes in coexistence.
Hezbollah.
That's wild. It is wild to me that the mayor, first of all, as an elected official, you never speak like that to anyone. Okay, you don't. I never spoke like that to anyone as an elected official. But not only that, he's basically calling this American an Islamophobe because the American does not want a street in Dearborn, Michigan to be named after someone who supports Hezbollah. Hezbollah is another listed terrorist entity in the United States. It seems like it would be common sense, right? Common sense. Do not name American streets after Islamic terrorists. That's a pretty low bar. And yet calling it out is Islamophobic. So that's what inspired Congressman Randy Fine to speak about Dearborn, Michigan, right? So he says, the mayor of Dearborn told a Christian that he was no longer welcomed in his city because he wouldn't support a Muslim terrorist having a road sign named after him. This is the evil we're up against. America will never become a Muslim country. Let's watch this.
Well, the mayor of Dearborn, in a city that has become 55% Muslim, told a Christian minister that he was no longer welcome there because he did not want a road named after a terrorist. That is what we're dealing with in this country. And when you have a radical jihadi like Mamdani possibly being elected in the city of New York, we've got to deal with that. Now, look, I know that I'm intense about these issues. I'm intense about a lot of things. But these issues matter, and we've got to be able to focus on it. Jews in the UK do not feel safe there anymore, and we do not want that for the United States. Well, the mayor of...
He's 100% right. 100% right. Right? He is seeing with his own eyes all of the various things, right? The Islamists in Texas who are going after Muslim store owners, telling them that they can't sell pork or alcohol or lottery tickets. Mamdani and his ties and his connections. And now the Muslim mayor of Dearborn attacking a Christian and saying, get out of my city, you're Islamophobic. It is wild to me. It is absolutely wild to me that the situation in Dearborn, Michigan has gotten so bad that a Muslim is saying to a Christian, get out of my city. I never ever thought that I would see that in America. Never thought I would see that. That's something that you see in like radical Middle East countries, right? And by radical Middle East countries, like the Islamic Republic occupying Iran, southern Lebanon, which is controlled by Hezbollah, parts of Iraq, right? Like that kind of language and behavior is what you see in areas that are controlled and run by Islamic terrorists. And you're seeing it openly. You're seeing it openly in Dearborn, Michigan, a city that was built by white Christians. America was pretty much built by white Christians, guys. And yet people have come in, they've taken over, and they're saying, get out of my city now. And the audacity that they have, like the scary part here is the audacity, guys, the audacity to think that they even have the right to say something like that, right? But this is how Islamists are. They come in, they occupy, they take control, they kick everyone out. It's either their way or the highway. You're seeing it unfold. Like I've shown you various examples already. The Dearborn, Michigan one is just another one. And then, of course, we get to the Mehdi Hasan nonsense again, right? And I spoke about this in last week's episode with Matt Walsh, where Mehdi Hasan says 1 in 3 of the slaves who built this country were Muslim, which is a complete fabrication, right? Again, Mehdi the Islamist with his lies, right? So Mehdi is basically saying that Muslims built America, right? It's that historic revisionism that the Islamists always do. They do it. They've done it with Iranian history. They've done it with Middle Eastern history. And now they're trying to do it with American history, right? They're now trying to do it with American history. They're trying to say Muslims built America, which is the farthest thing from the truth. And I spoke about this in last week's episode. It would have been, I think, Thursday. I spoke about this. And I compared this to, European slaves in the Middle East, right? If Mehdi Hassan thinks that the tiny minority of Muslims, very, very small, like a handful in the United States, built the United States, and therefore it's a Muslim country, does that mean that the Middle East is Christian because the Middle East had about 1 million slaves between the 16th and 18th centuries, 1 million slaves from Europe? Of course not. That's a ridiculous argument to make. And yet Mehdi Hassan is making that argument. And it's not that he's making the argument. Like, the Islamists always think like this. They always act like this. The question is whether or not they feel emboldened enough to say it, right? And that's where the concern is, because the Islamists, they are who they are. You can't change them. That's just their radical jihadi ideology. However, they don't expose themselves unless they feel confident that there's going to be no pushback, or unless they feel confident that they can say this in order to sway more people to their side. So the fact that Mehdi Hassan is now engaging in American historical revisionism by trying to claim that 1/3 of the Americans who built the United States were Muslim, like, it's wild. It can easily be fact-checked. And so Randy Fine is noticing this. He's noticing that these Islamists are following a certain agenda of attacking America, American historical revisionism, attacking white people, trying to take over. And so he says, if this guy wasn't a leading mainstream Muslim spokesperson, this nonsense would be hilarious. And then this is the important part. We have clearly suffered from massive naturalization fraud. People who swore an oath to America but clearly came to destroy it. It is time to go back and review every naturalization of the past 30 years, starting with Mamdani, Omar, that's Ilhan Omar, and Mehdi Hassan, and where fraud is found, denaturalize and deport. As someone who is a naturalized Canadian citizen, again, no, I'm not Arab, I'm Iranian. There's a difference. I was born in Iran. I speak Persian, not Arabic. So, but thank you for joining the live stream. If you're new, welcome. Don't forget to like and subscribe. But no, I'm definitely not Arabic. I'm Iranian. That's the flag of Iran behind me. But as a naturalized Canadian citizen, I fully agree with this policy. And I think we need a policy like this. I think we need something like this in Canada, because that citizenship oath, if it is taken fraudulently, I think that should be grounds for denaturalizing and deporting people. 100%, because this is how they have been able to infiltrate and invade Western countries. Now, this is wild. This is wild. So another example of how the Islamists are infiltrating the United States, right? Because today's focus is the United States. So End Wokeness said, Biden granted visa in 2024 to a man who joined the October 7th attack on Israel, Mahmoud Yaqub Muhtadi. He is armed and is living in Louisiana. So do you guys remember there was this massive push for Western countries like the United States and Canada and European countries as well to take in Palestinian refugees? And many of us who are from the Middle East were saying, how come no Middle Eastern countries are taking in the Palestinian refugees? Egypt shares a border with Gaza. Do you know how many Palestinian refugees Egypt took in? Pretty much next to none. Do you know why? Because people from the Middle East recognize that Palestinian society is inherently dangerous, and you can't really tell the difference between who's a civilian and who's associated with Hamas. How many Palestinian refugees were taken into Saudi Arabia or Jordan or UAE or any Middle Eastern country? Zero. And yet there was a massive push from Islamist lobby groups in the West and leftist politicians to import Palestinian refugees. This is a guy who, I'm assuming, came to America as a Palestinian refugee, someone who was supposedly should have been vetted. And instead, they found out this so-called Palestinian refugee was in fact a terrorist who participated in the October 7 massacre against the Jewish people. And he defrauded the system and came to the United States as a refugee. And Congressman Randy Fine finds out about this. He says, this Muslim terrorist was just taken into custody by the Justice Department. Thank God. Thank God at least he was taken into custody. Why would Joe Biden grant a visa to someone who was part of the October 7 Muslim terror attack? The Democrats' hatred for America just never stops. And guys, where there is smoke, there is fire. I have a feeling that this guy isn't an outlier. Like, he's not the only one. Again, there is a reason that no Middle Eastern country took in Palestinian refugees, not a single one. And yet there was a massive push to import them into Western countries. Do you know why? Because it's all part of the plan that they have to destabilize Western societies and take over. Again, Hamas is the Palestinian branch of the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood is an Islamic terrorist organization that is banned in countries like Saudi Arabia, Egypt, the UAE, because they are a radical terrorist organization. And even Muslim countries recognize them as Islamic terrorists, and yet countries like the United States are welcoming in so-called refugees with open arms. There is a serious problem with the immigration policies in Western countries. I mean, I'm glad that Justice Department found him eventually, but the scary part is that how is he even permitted to come to the United States in the first place? That's the scary part here. And how many more are like this terrorist? How many more terrorists have come to America under fraudulent pretenses of claiming asylum or refugee or whatever? Here we go. The West endures because we defend free speech and religious liberty. We'll never surrender those principles to Sharia rule. And now here he's speaking again about Zohran Mamdani. Again, remember that that imam I spoke about who was connected to that compound where they were training children to become Islamic terrorists? So now he's speaking about that on CNN.
We have to focus on mainstream Islam. I think we've gotten this wrong. The radical Muslims are the ones who want peace. They're the ones in the UAE, the ones in Dubai, many in Saudi Arabia who want peace. But it is the mainstream, the imams that we can see over and over and over again, like Mamdani campaigned with a couple days ago, who call for the destruction of the West. And we cannot be afraid to call it out. We have to recognize that there is evil in this world, and we have to fight it every day.
So I agree in essence with what he's saying, but the terminology is confusing. And I think the reason he's confused a little bit is because he doesn't quite understand. He doesn't quite get the nuances of the Middle East. Because again, he's not Middle Eastern. He's starting to learn, he's starting to pick up, but he's not quite getting it. So I would say that calling so first of all, he talks about, UAE and Saudi Arabia, and he recognizes that those countries are, peaceful, right? Like they're Muslim majority, like they're Muslim countries, but they're not engaging in Islamic terrorism. Now, the reason he calls them radical is because, you know, he wants to say they're radical because they're peace loving. I would instead use the word reform, right? Those are the more like the reform Muslims, right? They're reforming, they're becoming more peaceful. It's not about like jihad and stuff anymore, right? So I wouldn't call them radical because that's confusing. And then for the mainstream, again, like he's referring to the Islamists. I don't know if I agree with the mainstream, because there are 2 billion Muslims in the world, and not all of them are like this. We have to recognize that. I mean, Indonesia is the biggest Muslim population country, and Indonesia is very peaceful. I mean, you never really see like radical Indonesians, right? You go to Indonesia, it's relatively safe. He's talking about the Islamists, and I personally think it's unfair for him to say mainstream. I don't agree with that word. I think the language should be different. I have a lot of Muslim friends who are not Islamists, who are not Islamic terrorists. 30%, I would say between 20 to 30% of Iranians are Muslims. And they are fighting the Islamic Republic because, again, there's a difference between the two. Now, I know people have different opinions and everything on that. I'm not going to get into that because I'm here to talk about Islamic terrorism, but I do disagree with the terminology here, because there are a lot of Muslims who are fighting Islamic extremism. There's a lot of reform Muslims. And one of the reasons that they generally remain silent is because they don't want to be attacked and attacked by the radicals, right? Again, remember that video I showed you earlier of that imam in Houston, Texas, who was targeting Muslim store owners and saying that you can't sell alcohol or pork or lottery tickets because that's against Sharia law. The Muslim store owners, those are just, the regular Muslims who just want to live their lives in America and just, live and let live. It's the Islamists, it's the extremists, right? The radicals who are trying to force Sharia law on other Muslims. And, it doesn't end there. It would keep on expanding. So let's listen to this again. But again, I don't like the terminology, but listen to where he points out that there is a difference between countries like Saudi Arabia and the UAE versus the extremists in the country and in the United States, right? And then after that, I'm going to play what the emir of, what the foreign affairs minister of the UAE said. I played it for you before, but I'll play it again because that ties in directly to what Randy Fine is now saying, because the foreign affairs minister of the UAE in 2017 warned Western politicians that there will come a day where the Islamic terrorism problem is going to come from your countries because you guys don't know enough about the Middle East or Islam, and you're going to be afraid to call it out. 8 years later, Randy Fine has now realized, oh my gosh, we have an extremist problem in America because no one is calling it out.
We have to focus on mainstream Islam. I think we've gotten this wrong. The radical Muslims are the ones who want peace. They're the ones in the UAE, the ones in Dubai, many in Saudi Arabia who want peace. But it is the mainstream, the imams that we can see over and over and over again, like...
See, I think instead of saying radical, he should have said reform. He should have said the reform Muslims, right? The ones who've reformed instead of radical. I don't like that word, but again, but the thing is, he has made that distinction. He's making the distinction. I just think he needs to finesse and tune up the terminology a little
Islam. I think we've gotten this wrong. The radical Muslims are the ones who want peace. They're the ones in the UAE, the ones in Dubai, many in Saudi Arabia who want peace. But it is the mainstream, the imams that we can see over and over and over again, like Mandami campaigned with a couple days ago, who call for the destruction of the West. And we cannot be afraid to call it out. We have to recognize that there is evil in this world, and we have to fight it every day.
So that ties in perfectly with what the foreign affairs minister of the UAE said in 2017. Listen again.
And let me say this in English so you can understand what I'm saying.
Remember, he's a Muslim.
I have translation.
No, I know you have translation, but I just want to make sure you get it right. There will come a day that we will see far more radical extremists and terrorists coming out of Europe because of lack of decision-making, trying to be politically correct, or assuming that they know the Middle East and they know Islam and they know the others far better than we do. And I'm sorry, but that's pure ignorance.
So now you can see why Randy Fine is starting to speak out, because he's noticing that Islamic extremism, something that the foreign affairs minister of the United Arab Emirates, okay, a Muslim, he warned Western politicians about that in 2017. And he said, you guys are going to be too afraid to do anything because you don't know Islam, you don't understand it, you don't understand the Middle East, and you're going to be too afraid to say anything because you don't want to be accused of Islamophobia. And Randy Fine, to his credit, is speaking out about it, as he should. And I think as more politicians should. I was speaking out about it, and I was accused of Islamophobia by the National Council of Canadian Muslims, and I was kicked out of caucus for it because I was doing the exact same thing. I was raising awareness. I was trying to point out that the jihadi behavior in Canada is not something you see in the Middle East. This is not normal. This is not rational. And guys, if someone who was born in the Middle East, someone who was born in a country that is occupied by an Islamic dictatorship, that is governed by Sharia law. So I know exactly what Islamic terrorism is. I have lived it. My family has lived it. Millions of Iranians live through it daily. If someone like me can be accused of Islamophobia by the National Council of Canadian Muslims because I'm calling out Islamic terrorism, white people, you guys have no chance. You have no chance whatsoever. Like, that's the situation in Canada. The situation in Canada is so bad that even a Middle Eastern person who was born in a country that's occupied by Sharia law can be accused of Islamophobia by Islamist organizations. Yeah. Although, you know, I'm kind of glad that they accuse me of Islamophobia, because now that I'm out of politics, I can actually speak more freely, because there's a lot of things I couldn't say when I was a politician. I also wasn't focusing full time on raising awareness about radical Islam. But now that I'm not a politician anymore, I can speak about this all day, every day, for as many hours as I want. And because I've already been accused of being Islamophobic, it doesn't matter anymore. So I'll be blunt, I'll be open, I'll call it out for what it is. The only thing the National Council of Canadian Muslims did when they accused me of Islamophobia and petitioned to get me kicked out of caucus was empowering me to speak even louder, to speak even more. It made people pay attention, right? Because it's wild. For someone who's not from the Middle East, they were like, oh my gosh, why was this Middle Eastern woman accused of Islamophobia? And they started paying attention. And people are starting to realize that Islamophobia is a made-up word. Islamophobia doesn't exist. Islamophobia is a tool used by Islamists like Mehdi Hassan, like the National Council of Canadian Muslims, like all these other terrorist jihadi groups, to silence those who want to point out Islamic terrorism and radicalism and jihad. They have been using that to silence people for a long time, but now it's come to the point where they have used it so many times that it's starting to lose all meaning, because people are waking up. People are waking up and they're seeing the truth. Islamophobia doesn't exist. There's no such thing. Here we go. Let's see. Here we go. So here he is again. Republican Randy Fine is speaking about why Sharia law is not compatible with America, as someone who was born in a country that is occupied by an Islamic dictatorship that rules with Sharia law. So as someone who has experienced Sharia law, I can tell you 100% Sharia law is incompatible with the West. Sharia law has no place in the West. Sharia law has no place in the East either. Sharia law, guys, is evil. It is evil. Sharia law brings nothing but death and destruction. It is a backwards 7th century ideology that belongs in the trash can. I'm not talking about, Muslims. Like, you want to, that's your faith, that's fine. I'm talking about political Islam. I'm talking about Sharia law, right? Like when they want to impose Islamic laws and rules on everyone. That I 100% disagree with. If there's something you believe and, you're a private citizen and you want to practice your faith or whatever the way that you want to, and it doesn't affect anyone else, don't care, go for it. Right? Because I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about political Islam, Sharia law. Sharia law is incompatible with humanity, guys. It is completely incompatible with humanity. And you can ask any Iranian about this. Iran right now is occupied by an Islamic dictatorship. The stuff that they do to Iranians in the name of Allah and Islam and Sharia law is horrific. So Randy Fine has every right to say Sharia law is not compatible with America, and I 100% agree with him. And if you guys can see, there are Iranians in the chat who are writing in Farsi, and they all agree with me. And you see, like, they have lion emojis, the lion emoji. So the lion emoji represents this flag. This is the real flag of Iran. This is the flag of Iran before we were occupied by Islam. When the Islamists came and occupied Iran, they got rid of our flag and they changed it to a different flag, a disgusting crab flag that says Allahu Akbar. I'm not Arab, guys. I don't speak Arabic. I'm Iranian. I speak Persian. Why does the current flag have Arabic on it? I'll tell you why. Because what happened to Iran in 1979 was Islamic colonization. They colonized Iran, turned it into an Islamic caliphate governed by Sharia law, and they changed our flag. That's what the Islamists do. And then those of us who try to speak out are accused of Islamophobia in order to silence us or to discredit what's happening. And guys, the Islamic Revolution in Iran, it didn't happen overnight. It was a process that took about 15 years. It was a slow, incremental process. And the reason that I'm speaking out now is because we Iranians, we are seeing similar signs in the United States and Canada and in Europe. It didn't happen overnight. It took about 15 years. It took about 15 years for Iranian society to get to a point where the Islamists were able to take over. And if you guys don't stop it now, you're going to find yourself in the same position 15, 20, 30 years from now, God forbid. You need to take it seriously because we Iranians, we didn't take it seriously back then. We thought, oh, these are just a bunch of crazies. Like, what are they talking about? They're never going to gain power. And eventually they did. And look at what Iran is today. And not only like Iran wasn't good enough for them. It wasn't good enough for them to occupy our country. They're not coming into yours and trying to occupy yours. So Randy Fine is doing God's work. And he needs more support. Like, I wish more politicians would take the threat seriously and speak out about it like he is doing. Because what he's saying, it's like, he's not just like making it up for the sake of making it up. There are actual examples of Islamic extremism in the United States, and he is now noticing those things that many of us have been talking about for quite a while. So let's listen to this.
Do you feel like this Sharia law, is that compatible with our country in any way, with the West? I mean, we obviously think absolutely not, but can you explain to us, how do you argue this? How do you explain this in terms of, the bill you're introducing and how you view this within kind of our legal system?
Well, it isn't compatible. And let me talk about it at a high level. I think the reason that people don't speak out against it, partly it's fear, but partly it requires them to abandon a belief that most people take to heart, that all people are good, that there is not evil in this world, and that we don't have to fight it every day. And the fact of the matter is, Sharia is a philosophy built on evil, on killing people who do not believe, on subjugating women, on controlling and conquering, and is very difficult. People want to live in their bubble where everything is fine and we can sit around and sing kumbaya, and that's how the world will work. That's why you see gay people out marching for Gaza, because they cannot internalize that if they went to Gaza, that they would be killed. It is so difficult to internalize that. And if I were to take exception, part of the problem is not radical Islam. Radical Islam are the people who want to not kill us.
Again, I don't like this terminology. I think he should be saying reform, right? He's referring to reform Islam that's been modernized, right? It's modernized, it's changed. I don't like the word radical. I wish he would say reform, because reform makes more sense. But anyways, if anyone knows him, or Randy Fine, if you see this, this is my suggestion to you. Don't say radical when you're referring to the peaceful Muslims. Say reform, because that makes more sense.
The radicals in the UAE who signed the Abraham Accords, or in Dubai, there are Muslims who are radical because they want peace. They want to coexist. The problem is mainstream Islam. And when the NAACP of Muslims, a group called CARE, is actively advocating for Hamas, you have to say the problem is not the radicals, the problem is the mainstream. Now, what my bill will do is say they can't bring their their mainstream policies to the United States. They cannot institute Sharia in this country. They can't tell people what to wear. They can't tell people what to eat. They can't blast their call to prayer of conquering at 5 o'clock in the morning. They cannot institute their policies, which, by the way, they are very clear that that is their goal. One of the most extraordinary things about all of this is you can find video after video after video after video, not videos that have been done with a secret camera that someone snuck in, but they broadcast them very proudly on Facebook, saying we are here to conquer the United States and make it part of the Islamic Caliphate. My bill would stop that, which your husband and 17 other congressmen have co-sponsored, and Tommy Tuberville has introduced in the Senate.
Yeah. No, I mean, 17, that's not enough. We need to have every single person on board. But when I think about this, because you're right, we say radical Islam, but in reality, it's actually quite radical if you are someone who's going against the grain of Islam. So I applaud those people if they're willing to go against the grain.
There you go, guys. So very important what he's saying there. So I'm going to end it here. I hope that this gave you a little bit of input and insight into how American politicians are starting to wake up and fight back against the threat of radical Islam, against the Islamic extremists, because these things have been going on for quite a while. And people are finally starting to notice and pay attention. So if you are American, you definitely want to reach out to your elected officials and ask them to support the no Sharia law. And if you missed the part about what the UAE Foreign Affairs Minister said, make sure you go back to the beginning of my live stream and watch that. I'm going to end it here, guys. I want to thank you all for joining. If you can, like and subscribe. And tomorrow I have a very interesting episode for you. So this is by request. Someone asked me if I can do a live stream to talk about the Iranian reaction to President Trump bombing the Islamic Republic's nuclear sites, because they're very interested in knowing what Iranians thought about that attack, because they heard several things in the mainstream media. They also heard a lot from the Islamists, but they didn't really hear from the Iranian people. So make sure you join tomorrow. I'm going to go live at 12 noon Eastern time, and I'm going to tell you everything about what Iranians think about Americans, how Iranians view Americans, how Iranians see the future relationship with Americans. I will also share with you what Iranians think about President Trump, how Iranians reacted to President Trump's decision to bomb the nuclear facilities. And you might find the answers surprising. You might find the answers not exactly what you thought. And that's because you have been lied to about Iran. You have not been told the full picture about Iran. But if you tune in tomorrow, I'll go over everything. Thank you so much, guys, for joining. And until tomorrow, Payanda Iran, Javid Shah.